at the Guinness. I just, Tisha B'Av, of course, is the culmination of the 3 weeks. We refer to as Bein HaMetzorim, from Shabusar B'Tamas to Tisha B'Av. And we're all availim today. We're all are practicing avelis for the Beis Mikdash Rishon and the Beis Mikdash Sheni that we lost Nebuch and so forth. So and of course for this is the culmination, as I mentioned by Namsorim, of the 3 weeks. As I was listening and I was following the Kinnis last night, there are many things in there that I pictured our imprisonment and our time of the Churban Europe, our time then we were in many different people of different backgrounds. I always say we are not only dealing here with Gedolim or Rabbonim, we're dealing here with Pushite people who were Balabatan, who were merchants and business people and so forth, that finally ended up in these circumstances. And they were all and I'm always trying to stick to one thing. When I mentioned that Rabbi Roshi, Rabbi Lau was once in Chicago and he gave a speech about the Tosheres HaPleito. He said it's about time that we stop talking how brothers and sisters perished during the Churban Europe. It's about time we start talking how they lived. Not how they lived in Barsha, not how they lived in Lodz, not how they lived in Munkach or Chust or any other place, but how did they live during the worst of time when they were struggling to survive in the camps. And one thing from Eichu last night especially hit me very hard. And then it says, Toiv mechalelei mecherev mechalelei ruach. It is much easier, and was much more better preferred for Nebuch, for these during the Churban Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni, during that Churban, so to go through Chalelei Cherev and Chalelei Ruach, to die of hunger. My friends, I have seen people die of hunger, and this is the thing that we constantly, only battle that we went through every day and actually every hour, is try to survive, not try to survive from hunger. And this is all that was on our minds. We were not, at that time, we were not actually very much concerned about what happened to my father, what happened to my brother or sister. It was only one thing and task of everybody is to survive another day and somehow try to get through the pains of hunger. So this is very, very true. The Toy Mechala Nebuch, people who were killed by a bullet or some Rotzeach, hit him over the head with a 2x4. It was better for them, Nebuch. And many people came to me. We were about 7 young boys of my age. You have to remember that actually I was 14 years old when they locked me up in the camps. Although Baruch Hashem, I had a shaliach when we arrived to Auschwitz, gave me a tip off and says, Yengele, wie alt bist du? How old are you? And I told him I'm 14, and he says, "Die bist nicht 14, die bist 18. You're not 14, you're 18." And this particular, I don't know. I never learned his name. I never learned. I was approximately 21 years old. He was also a prisoner in charge of the arrivals of these transports to Auschwitz. And he told me, you're not 14, you're 18. Remember that. And of course, when the time came, then they asked me to identify myself and how old I am. I saw this young man in front of my eyes, and I told him I'm 18. And of course, as once we were given those striped clothing and prison clothing and so on, now the time to survive has started, so forth. So I'll tell you a few things that I remember distinctly. I remember distinctly, speaking of hunger, it was constantly the only thing that was on everybody's mind. Many times when we went we were working in different shifts. I had sometimes this as far as I have seen, but and I could see every moment, many times when my life was absolutely about to end, that something saved me. So this about happened many times from the moment when this young man came along and tipped me off that you are not 14, you're 18. Many times there were times when always, I cannot tell you how many times my life almost ended, but I could see in each time my emunah Hashem got stronger because I could see there must be something here that is guiding me. Maybe, just maybe, I will survive this ordeal. Many of my fellow prisoners came to me and says, so like, why are you encourage us to continue and try to fight, to put up the fight for survival? Don't you see what's going on? Why don't you turn your head and see what's in the back of you? We'll all end up over there. They were, of course, they were realistic, but I told them, I says, you shouldn't think that way. Because when somebody came with these tanas and these complaints and say, why should I continue fighting for survival? I immediately knew that this is the end of this person, so I tried to encourage them. And I told them, I said, the reason I am trying to encourage everybody to try to survive is because I am not a Novi from the Rebbeinu Shalom. I'm not actually yet from the Rebbeinu Shalom. But I can tell you only one thing, which I'm sure that you're aware of, except that you didn't take a moment to think about. Once we are already imprisoned here in this, under these conditions, we all knew that the war ended already. The war was lost. Those Russians and those Nazis lost the war in 19, I would say not in 1944, but they lost the war in 1943, when they had the Mapol in Stalingrad. So there is no doubt about it, the war was going to an end. The only thing is we did not have any news flashes. We did not have any. We only could see the planes flying over us constantly on bombing missions. We knew they were going on bombing missions. There was some bombing going on near our camp also. And so we knew, so I told them, look here, the war has to come to an end because it was already almost ended when they took care of all these hundreds of thousands of Hungarian Jews when they transported them to Auschwitz already, which was something of, it's a different issue to discuss. But, and I said, try to hold out and maybe, just maybe you will survive. And of course, unfortunately, many were also taken by machelas, were taken by dysentery and other typhus and so forth. But the ones that were still skin and bone, but nevertheless they tried to, the only way we tried somehow to still our hunger was by this, every time we went together in a group who were free from work, we were able to talk to each other. The biggest discussion and the only topic was food. What we ate at home, was Yontif like, what was this? Thinking that maybe discussing just what we were taking part in during the normal times is what is still our hunger. But I don't know whether it did or didn't, but nevertheless, was the biggest topic, so always between us. And I would tell you, I mean, the way the Rebbeinu Shalom was I think leading things. I was appointed to a type of work where I had to. Most of the prisoners were working and digging a tunnel, and the tunnel was actually was fortified with cement in order for it not to cave in. These tunnels were built under a mountain with the idea of these Roshim that eventually they will establish factories over there that will contribute to their victories on the field of battlefields. So this is many of these satellite camps. This was the work of the prisoners, is trying to build for them future places to manufacture war material. And of course it will also be camouflaged from the planes that are coming on bombing missions, they will not be seen. So my task was to pick up those pointers that they were drilling with, and with air hammers into the mountain, and constantly advanced in making the tunnel deeper and deeper. My task was to gather up these pointers that are dull and take them out to the blacksmith. There was a blacksmith who was having a fire, coal fire, going outside of the tunnel. You couldn't have a fire in the tunnels because the fire would eat up all the oxygen and it would be very dangerous. So my friends, Baruch Hashem, I had access to fire. Having access to fire, as I mentioned many times, we didn't have, they took us everything from us. They took watches, our pencils, papers, books, calendars. We didn't have anything like this. But nevertheless, we stayed there. They couldn't take us away. The only thing they couldn't take away, this Roskan, is the Emunas Hashem, and also trying to survive, and also the will to survive, and based and maybe to perform here and there, some under the circumstances to perform a mitzvah, as I usually list some of the mitzvahs that I have been through, witnessed some of those prisoners in my book. And you're probably familiar with my book. If not, you can find it on internet. But I'm saying the reason why I bring this up, because having access to fire was a tremendous advantage. Why? Because somebody found some kind of a bone or a rotten tomato or anything that was once maybe an article of food, and they gave it to me, and I cinched it on the fire. It was certainly something that at least we could somehow try to chew or try to scrape off into a powder. The other thing was that the biggest problem in the camp was always dysentery. Many times this flared up so much that people couldn't handle it anymore. Some prisoners couldn't handle it, and they got so weak that eventually they ended up in, it's called a revere. It was called a hospital. But anybody that ended up in that hospital, I don't know if anybody that checked in that ever checked out. I don't know if anybody ever came out of that hospital. But anyhow, I, as a little boy, I remember that I was told that for dysentery, I heard from a druggist that dysentery, the refuah is coal dust. Dust from coal. I'm not talking about coal that was mined in a coal mine. I'm talking about you took a piece of wood and made it red hot and was flame burning, and then cooled off. And then I scraped off, and I had the blacksmith that I was working with, who gave me, was very good guy, gave me permission to do that. And I took wood and I burned it and scraped off after it got cooled off. I scraped off with my spoon that everybody carried, a aluminum spoon. Scraped off the powder, but unfortunately I didn't have what to pack in. We didn't have any paper or anything. So consequently, also the blacksmith gave me an idea. He said there is a pond not far from here, a water pond, and there are some big leaves growing above there. So why don't you take some of these leaves and pack the powder in these leaves, which I did, and I distributed that coal powder to many of the prisoners, that my friends also, that suffered from this machla of dysentery. And Baruch Hashem, it helped, many helped, and it brought them back to some normalcy. So this was a tremendous thing that Rabbi Yishua helped me, that I was able to accomplish. The other mentioned, the thing that Rabbi Yishua sent us, as I mentioned to you, we didn't have any paper, any pencil, any calendars. But nevertheless, if some prisoner wanted to know about when it's Shavuos B'Tammuz, or when it's Chodesh Iyar, or when it's Chodesh Av, I mean, there was send us a person like Couple the Calendar. We were calling him the calendar, the keeper of the calendar. Couple had a computer up here, and somebody did want to know during the circumstances when is many people wanted to know what day it is. We didn't keep any day. We got up and go to work, and we came back from work, and they gave us that little. I'm saying why does the hunger constantly was there? Because what they gave us is just to hold up our neshamas, not to completely, but people, of course, little by little, as they kept on losing weight and deteriorating. many of them have, of course, hunger came in to the point where they died of that particular also. So constantly, but they just gave us enough to be able to hold on to the shumas and squeeze out as much work as we can from these prisoners. So that was the thing. So that reminded me when in the Naifa, in many of you places, which was almost parallel, but especially when it says, Toy Mechalelai, of dying of hunger. I will tell you, Baruch Hashem, eventually, as I go through, I will only tell you one item that left a big mark on me, and this was once we came back from work and they lined us up every time, counted us, whether nobody is missing, and so forth. Once they counted us, and there was in the camp, there was suddenly, I hear everybody was whispering and so forth. So I said to my friends, something must have happened. What's going on? Why is everybody whispering? He says, oh, didn't you know? Didn't you hear yet? The news. I says, what is it? He says, tonight is Yom Kippur night. So tonight is Yom Kippur night. So what's the difference? So anyhow, we were all getting ready after they gave us this little gemiza, little soup called soup. It was from rotten vegetables and so on. After they gave us that, we had to go to sleep, and as usual, because next morning we were already, had to wake up and going to work. So this evening I heard there was Yom Kippur, so I was sleeping on the top bunk, and there were 3 tier bunks, and I was sleeping with my friends on the top one, and I was thinking to myself, it's Yom Kippur night, the only thing to do before I fall asleep is to lay down and start going over in my mind, what was Yom Kippur like at home? What were the macholim for before Erev Yom Kippur, when we ate the wonderful chicken soup and all the macholim before the fast, and also, of course, after the fast. And also, I must tell you, my friends, that my father, was a shliach for the Yom Neruim. He was about tefillah. He was davening for the Yom. And he took me along every time when he was davening as a little boy, starting probably from the age of 6, 7, 8. I was standing always next to him when he was doing the Yom Kippur tefillah, or Shona tefillah. As I lay down and I tried to picture myself in the sliva of this particular time, and bring myself back, and I suddenly I will listen to my father, how he started the Kol Nidre. And as I am putting myself in this rayon, in this particular thoughts, suddenly I hear Kol Nidre. I hear this, and I'm thinking to myself, something is wrong. This is not my father's. This is not my father's voice. I'm thinking to myself, and I'm getting upset, because after the tefillah was finished, after Kol Nidre was finished, somebody else, I hear again the next tefillah, when we go through Yom Kippur night and so forth, and I constantly getting more and more aggravated, and I say, this is not my father's, this is not my father's voice. And eventually I fell asleep, and in the morning everybody's woken up, I get up and I turn to my friends who were sleeping also on the same bunk, and I says, I want to tell you a strange dream that I had. I mean, I never told them any dreams that we discussed. We didn't discuss dreams, we discussed food. I said, I had a strange dream that it was Yom Kippur night, we all knew it was Yom Kippur night, and I says, I went back in my thoughts, in my feelings, I went back to picture Yom Kippur night under normal circumstances, but I was very upset. I heard the tefillahs of Yom Kippur night, and it was not my father's nisach. And they said, what do you mean it was not your father's nisach? What are you talking about? He says, this took place here last night in the barracks. You're not aware that we had tefillahs every prisoner, and there were about 250 in this barrack. I mean, there's always one Yid who came who knew one of the tefillahs by heart, and one got up after the other and recited starting with Kol Nidre, recited those tefillahs. This is the only time that actually in our barracks a Zman Tefillah took place where people were actually praying, even though everybody was laying on his bunk. He didn't stay straight up, but nevertheless, there was always, they found somebody that was able to go through the Nisach HaTfilah that we listened to, and that's what I heard. And I thought that this was something that I heard in a dream, but this was not a dream. And it was an actuality, this took place, and my friends told me we were up almost till the morning to listen to these fellows, and you fell asleep, we didn't want to wake you. But nevertheless, I said in Fritz, the Blockelster, every block had a Blockelster in a couple. Fritz, who was a gypsy, he says that he didn't bring in those Raschen with guns and so forth and wipes us out. No, he tolerated that, and he had those fillers. So this is something that, again, is very much inscribed in my mind. And I just want to tell you, my friends, just a few notes about the liberation. The liberation was a very, very important. I can sometimes speak about liberation itself, the time of liberation, and how it proceeded and how it took place, and how we took it as and so forth, and what happened at the time of liberation, how our hungers were still. I can speak for hours, but just to tell you that I believe, according to my humble opinion, I compared liberation of these camps. There were many. I'm not talking about our particular camp, which was the fourth one for myself, called Ebenzee. I'm not talking about all the satellite camps where Sheres Haplaita was standing liberated. And my friends, the hunger pains were already stilled. Let's say the hunger pains were stilled. The Americans in our camp made a big mistake because the first thing they brought in an army field kitchen and put it up on their Feldplatz, and they started cooking bacon and rice, a terrible concussion, which most prisoners couldn't take, their digestive system couldn't handle, and they died needlessly because this exploded in their insides, so to speak. But when the Bonishlam again gave me das, gave me understanding not to take part, even though we were all ready to sell our lives for a loaf of bread if necessary. We would all do this at that time. But nevertheless, we didn't take part in this. But eventually they brought in other field kitchens, and they started distributing powdered milk and farina and oatmeal, and that our digestive system could take. But the reason I'm saying compare it to Mamad Har Sinai is because there were many who were liberated and standing to me, and as I said, once the hunger pains were already gone, now we started suddenly taking dinner cheshbon, makara, what happened here? Where's my father? Where's my mother? Where's my brother? Where's my sister? How am I going to know who survived and who didn't survive? There was no communication of any type. There was no phones. There was certainly no cell phones. There was nothing. Everything was bombed out. Everything was destroyed. There was nothing moving, so forth. So everybody had started taking a little inventory, what is going to be the future, and so forth. And as this went on, many said, there's no Rebbein Shalom. There are also a group says, look here, I'm going to be a good Jew. I'm not going to murder. I'm going to honor my parents, and so forth. But I don't need all the mitzvahs that the Gedolim had the Rabbanan instituted. I don't need this. So the same thing. So and of course others said, and this is my comparison to Har Sinai. It's also the parallel thing happened at that time. The Rebbein Shalom had to take the mountain and hold it over our heads. It's like a barrel. I mean, and the Rebbein Shalom threatened us that we accept the Torah, fine. If not, Shom Tiyeh K'voraskem, there will be your end. So why did the Rebbein Shalom have to threaten us? Because again, the Rebbein Shalom knew that we accept Torah Shebiksav without Torah Shebalpeh, we will not have any future. We cannot exist as Jews without Torah Shebalpeh and Torah Shebiksav. So consequently, I think fortunately the Rebbein Shalom also at that time sent us shlichim like Rabbi Yossi Halberstam, the Kozenberger Rebbe, and also Silver from Cincinnati. I mean that should be a beta for us. they send us, and also some shalichim from Eretz Yisrael who told us, my brothers and sisters, we have no choice except to go back to our Messiah that was given us by our fathers, but our mothers, since we were little children. And also the Messiah that we are taught as little children in the Cheder and in the yeshivas. And if not, we again will not have any future. We will not be able to exist unless we go back to our Messiahs and the original thought. And sure enough, he says, if not, Shom Tiyeh Kevorastem. If we don't do this, then our end will be in Auschwitz and Majdanek and Birkenau and Treblinka. So again, fortunately, I said, Kimu Kiblu Mashi Kiblu Kvar. It's just like in Purim. Again, there was a reconfirmation of the Torah Shebal Peh and Torah Shebiksav in time of Mordechai Esther, just after not only thousands of years ago, but about 75, 80 years ago, we again reconfirmed that we have to accept our teaching from the Messiah from our parents. And I firmly believe, my friends, that the fact that we have today Moses HaTorah in all over America, we have it in Milwaukee and in South Bend and in Lakewood and in New York and all over the world, all the Messiah, and we have that are bursting by the seams in order to learn Torah. It is all because Kimu v'Kiblu Masha Kiblu Kvar. Because we have again reconfirmed to be accepted the Torah at the time of liberation. Make their blessings, may their memories be a blessing to us. Call to a message Mashiach should come. We don't have to be misablim al churban from the Bayis Rishon Bayis Sheni anymore. Thank you very much.